But okay, here we are. Last morning of this gathering, practice gathering, this session, kind of session, Zen retreat. We had a very powerful, clear, deep talk from Valerie yesterday. Fantastic, addressing the world of Mu, what it is like in there, and how that world of Mu is none other than this world, but it is seen in a very different way, but at the same time, exactly the same way. This sort of paradoxical nature of awakening, beyond thought, can't really be rendered. It can't be rendered at all. Can't be rendered in speech, can't be rendered in thought, can't be rendered. There is no representation of it. It's right in the very fabric of our experience. So you can't represent it. Certainly you can speak from it, act from it, live from it, in it. And that's what all the koans do. But because it can't be represented, koans are, necessarily only partially effective. There is no effective method for helping one another to share in this very hard to convey shift in our experience that is connoted by the word awakening. Of course, there are lots of methods that have evolved. Koans are one of them. Or you might say each koan is one. Each koan is its own universe. Each koan is a universe free of barriers and boundaries and obstructions and hindrances, free of them all. Each koan. And Mu is, of course, no exception. But it's called a gateless gate because it's a gate in the sense that there's something that we go through when we enter the land of awakening. But it's gateless because we don't go through anything. And the land of awakening is this land that we know. It's going to the shops, having a job, having friends, maybe or maybe not raising a family, car needing a service, time to change the tires, doing taxes. And very nicely, they gave us an extension this year, May 17. Wow. In the US, tax day, instead of April 15. It's this world, that's why so many of the koans are about ordinary things. The monk asks, what's great awakening? I mean, couched in this particular koan in other terms, which I won't go into right now, but essentially a monk asks, what's great awakening? And Unmon answers, rice in the bowl, water in the bucket. I mean, the monk could easily respond, but I mean, I know we put rice in a bowl. I know we put water in the bucket. What are you telling me? That I've got to, sit and train and do this very rigorous training just in order to know that? And you might think I mean, a conceptual approach might think, well, maybe there's a way of knowing the rice in the bowl, knowing what that phenomenon is, rice in bowl, more vividly than I normally do. More kind of get it more in a more real, tangible, vivid, alive way. Maybe I kind of know what it's like to put my spoon in the pan of the rice and lift a spoon, but maybe I don't know it clearly enough. I could experience it more vividly. Maybe that's what the koan's trying to do. It's trying to sort of just improve my version of aliveness. Give it just raise it a few degrees or several times. Go from number 2 on the volume scale to a 10. Really hear it, feel it, know it vividly, powerfully. Maybe that's what the point of a koan is. No. That would be the point of mindfulness training. To allow increase our clarity. You could almost say our sensitivity to sense experience. And then, I mean, that's not the end of it, but that's part of it. To open up the aperture so we receive this moment more richly. Fine, well and good, but you don't need koans for that. You don't need mu for that. That's mindfulness training, really. Well, maybe it's to become more acutely aware that, that rice in the bowl won't be there forever. Maybe I need to dial into impermanence more clearly. The fact that all of this experience called life is ephemeral. It's finite. It's going to be over. I'm going to go the way of 112 billion other human beings over the millennia and die. I got to get that more acutely. That rice in the bowl. I mean, you think about it, leave the rice 7 days in the bowl and it's already moldy and you can't eat it. Is that what it means? And actually, there's another sense of impermanence in Buddhism. It's not just to understand that things are ephemeral and what's the word? Transitory, transient. If there's a difference. It's not just that. It's actually that if we really get into our samadhi, that deep absorption and concentration, unification of mind and deep stillness and clarity in our sitting, if we get there, we start to see that things are not only impermanent in the sense that they come to an end, but actually they're constantly in flux, constantly changing. This very moment is a kind of flickering show, and you can get to see that clearly in sitting. There's this, you can even start to see that there's a kind of background vacancy and all sense experiences sort of jumping out of it in little pulsations, in little pixelations, in a kind of a whirring flux. It's wonderful to see that quality of apparently steady reality is actually a flux, a flow, a flickering. Is that what a koan is trying to convey? Is that what Mu wants me to say? Well, no, not really, actually, because that hasn't. That's a very clearer, deeper way of seeing things that samadhi can foster, bring about. But that's still not awakening. Not really. There's a witness still. There's a person, a meditator, seeing things, in a remarkably deeper kind of way, but it's not awakening. What is awakening then? Well, I think we heard beautifully from Valerie about it yesterday. I mean, the heart of it is that this sense of I and me and my life has been an invention. It has not been all along. It has not been what I've taken it to be. And when it sort of when it snuffs itself out, or when it sort of whirls, the little dust devil whirls away and is gone. We're not separate. We're not separate from anything. There's one indivisibility, one indivisible reality. And that rice in the bowl is precisely that. The water in the bucket is precisely all. Mu is precisely all. I was saying earlier how, Mu is an odd practice, really, I keep thinking. And if I hadn't known it to be so startlingly effective in many cases with many people, I might think, well, why are we doing it? But it is startlingly effective. Once again, there's the little mu, the sound, the syllable that we make an object of our attention, usually on the out breath. By the way, there's another non-orthodox way of practicing with mu, where you can label every sense experience with mu. It's not the standard way of doing it, but you be aware of a sensation of your ankle, call it mu. Aware of a breath, call it mu. In breath or out breath, mu, mu. Aware of some little speck on the wall. If you're gazing at the wall, call it mu. The wall itself, mu. The seat, the sensation of the seat beneath, mu. And your knees perhaps, or your feet on the floor. The feet, the knees are mu. The floor is mu. A gust of wind outside, audible, that's mu. Label it mu. You can try that if you like from time to time. But so whatever it is, there's the little sound mu. But can you get a sense that that little sound might be a little token representative of something much greater that's all around? It's the very space of awareness. Another mu, so to speak. It's as if I've sometimes thought that it's as if we focus on the little mu to keep our busy mind distracted, or maybe distracted, to keep our busy mind occupied with that little mu, so that the great big monster mu can creep up behind us without our noticing. We're too busy on the little mu in front of us to notice the huge, Godzilla mu creeping up behind. If we knew it was coming, we'd never let it. We'd turn around and we'd scream and run away and think, I'm not going to do this anymore. Get me out of here. What is this madness? But actually, if we're busy enough with that little moo, Godzilla can come up behind us. And suddenly, when we're least expecting it, when the last thing on our minds is Godzilla, we're deeply in mu. So for us, you see, the samadhi of mu, being deeply absorbed in mu, is so valuable, because the more occupied we are with mu, we don't hear the little secret footsteps coming up behind that's going to eat us. We wouldn't sit there and be eaten if we knew the mouth was opening, this great, vast mouth was opening right behind us. It's like in, it's like the sort of, in a movie, we see the monster coming up behind us. This starts, look round, but no, the dumb hero is too busy sort of, trying to get his cigarette lit or something. He doesn't see the great monster coming up behind. But it's good from this point of view. From the point of view of this practice, it's the best thing to be so occupied, you don't know what's behind you. The huge jaws are opening, the fangs of Mu. You're sitting on Mu's tongue and you don't even realize it because you're so busy with Mu. Just that little Mu. You're such a good practitioner. You're so absorbed in Mu. You're doing it so well that you have no idea that you're in the mouth of the beast and the jaws are about to snap shut and eat you alive. It's sort of like that. Now, I'm making it sound probably rather scary, And in a way, if you have a powerful Mu experience, it would be scary if you weren't in this great context of practice. Lineage, hand-holding, guides, support, ancient tradition, knows what it's doing. It's incredible what this is really about. Okay, just 1 second. I'm going to put this thing over my screen so that I don't get my eyes all messed up. Hold on. Okay, now here's what I'm going to sort of spin a little into talking about today. Is I'm really going to address this question, why Mu, in another way, because I want to address two other practices that are very common in modern meditation practices in the modern West, and just kind of explain a little bit how Mu practice, koan practice, Zen way would compare with them. The first, obviously, is just sort of normal mindfulness, and I mean normal meaning mindfulness that is about de-stressing, being more present, being more focused, being more attentive, being less reactive. We often talk about dialing down the nervous system, toning the nervous system, getting it more balanced. It's actually also fortifying the nervous system, actually, strengthening the nervous system. Yeah, so both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic sides of the nervous system, the one that the first being about rest and digest, often they say, and the sympathetic more about, being active. And it's the sympathetic side that can spin off and go into reactivity and sort of get stuck in reactivity. And some would call that trauma now, or PTSD. We can't seem to disengage it. It just goes looping on, and chest feels all tight and it's yucky. And then you have to try to learn to live with it because it's not stopping. So you create unhealthy, ways of being, of interacting and being, and all of that. Mindfulness can be a very effective intervention for. And it's not like you have to be traumatized for mindfulness to be worth doing. Not at all. It's just that there's a whole movement these days that's seeing trauma as far more widespread. The meaning of the word has probably shifted from what it was in the old days. It was a heavier thing, really. And now it's like, A lot of people are stressed, and that might be called trauma. And it may be sometimes it's too strong a word, really. Anyway, there's a lot of views on it, but and there's a lot of interventions. Mindfulness is being implemented in the course of other kinds of intervention quite a bit these days. Now, but what does a crazy practice like Moo have to offer in the world of mindfulness? Well, um, potentially quite a lot, because modern mindfulness doesn't seem to really know about awakening, or if it does, it gets sort of forgotten somewhere. It's off in the mists down the road. The road doesn't go there. The road is about just getting healthier, becoming a more productive citizen, a less stressed out citizen, a kinder, maybe nicer citizen. Great, all fantastic. But the path begins with mindfulness in traditional Buddhism, and it goes on from there. That's only a starting foundation for the real liberative purpose of practice, the great liberation that is worth knowing about, worth hearing about, worth talking about, because it's real for all of us. This great liberative discovery is real. It's not and it's not remote. It's immediate. And this is where Zen comes in. I mean, right off the bat, 1,500 years ago, when Zen was emerging as a sort of force of practice, 1,400 years ago in China, it was saying, hey, this is not an incremental business. This awakening does not have to be incremental. And the reason it doesn't have to be is that it's always the case. It's always the case that your sense of self is a mirage. It's never more than a mirage. You might think, no, the sense of self is so deeply entrenched. And the sort of longer I've been convinced in it, which is basically forever, the deeper it is. And the sort of, so therefore my practice has to dig deeper and deeper and deeper to sort of get at it, to get at its roots, kind of thing. But actually, that's not true. It's always a chimera, a mirage, a reflection on water. That's why Bodhidharma in the 6th century in China said, all you have to do is look into your own heart and become Buddha. Or more precisely, he said, or in other words, he said, look into your very own heart mind. Unfortunately, we just don't have a good English word. I wondered whether soul, because I brought it in the other day, whether that might. No, it's not. It's not really right. It's the experience, the sort of just the experience of whoever you think it is that's present with thought and feeling and sense experience. Whoever you think the recipient of thought, feeling, sense experience, the observer of thought, feeling, sense experience, whoever you feel that to be, let's take it as that. Look into that, and you'll find that it's not what it has seemed to be, and in some way that you can't think through, actually what you are is everything. And that's kind of because you're nothing. Now, Valerie put it so beautifully, and it's everything rushes in when self is gone. Dogen said, to do this practice is basically to examine yourself. To examine yourself is to forget yourself. To forget yourself is to be awakened by the 10,000 things. Now, that is the the great liberative possibility of practice. But it's not only liberative, it has a profound sort of ethical implication to discover in vivid experience that, you know, my life is not my life. It's the life of all. To find that this self-protective sort of activity that's been going on in me for as long as I remember, really, it's sort of with maybe some blessed lulls, you know, but sort of self-defensive, self-protective workings of my heart, mind, you know, that is have been completely beside the point. I've been in a great belonging, and in a way, the only thing hiding it was my self-defendedness, my self-protectiveness. When that's released, I'm all. I'm part of all. It's not like I'm all in some sort of grandiose way. It's just the reality of my life is that it's subsumed by all. It's absorbed by all. It's in all. And that's I mean, that's a greater project than calming my nervous system. I mean, yes, I may well need to also calm my nervous system, because at times, you know, being human with my 3-part brain or 4-part brain, I'm going to get in these contractions and feel scared and defensive and anxious, and I need a way to manage that. It's not really fair to just sort of crack the whip and say, "You fool! There's nobody there. Why are you suffering? You know, why are you worrying? There's nobody there." That doesn't really help. It's kindness is what helps, lovingness, tenderness, and that great Western sort of virtue in deficit, the virtue that we don't think of as a virtue, self-love, self-cherishing. It's not the same as self-serving. Self-cherishing. Can you hear the difference? To be ready to cherish and nurture yourself because you exist. You are existing. You do have life. Maybe that the sense of self that you are convinced by is a trick of the light, but still, you know, this person's existing and isn't forever. The universe has seen fit to sort of, in some sense, create you. You know, the least you can do is take care of this creature that the universe has made. It's infinitely complex and brilliant and amazing, also kind of dumb, but, you know, creature that you are. Very amazing thing. And we must cherish it. And, you know, in the West, we got all kinds of harsh cultural conditioning that seems to make that hard. And we can point the finger in various directions, you know, why that should be. Some ideologies that we've been hoodwinked by for thousands of years, very, very mean ideologies and so on. Anyway, we're coming out of that so mercifully. Now, here's so that's on the one side, mindfulness. Now, another thing that's popular in the West among spiritual folks these days, and it's been, I think, growing in popularity, and understandably and rightly, is you know, what's known these days as non-dual awareness. It's sort of there's some sort of famous teachers of it on that you can find on the web. And, you know, it's all, you don't have to meditate. You just sort of come to a workshop and I'll kind of guide you into discovering your broader awareness that is really who you are, not your localized, contracted sense of self. And it's very nice, actually, and it's quite has quite a high hit rate, in the sense that it's relatively easy for people to get a taste of this. I mean, I could describe it like this, and there's many, many ways people come at it, but one would be like, okay, we're sitting here, we have our awareness. Now, we consider awareness to sort of somehow be localized in perhaps our body. I mean, you might think it's localized in your skull, but you can be aware of your body. So awareness can obviously sort of occupy more than just your skull, it can occupy your body. You may also be able to get a sense that your awareness somehow can sort of occupy the room you're in, and maybe that's harder to get, but perhaps you can get that. You're the whole sort of foreground of your experience, your awareness can at least touch all the elements in the sort of foreground. Your awareness can interact with, be aware, can sense. So maybe you can get this sense that your awareness can occupy a kind of stage in front of you where your life is happening. A little bit like a sort of the way a stage in the theater is kind of like a box. It's a bit like that's where my life is. It's in this box that, I see, I hear, I touch, basically. And of course, also sometimes I turn the gaze into the body and feel things in there. And that's also part of the sort of stage. It's all kind of in front, like the stage in a theater. Now, what's going on outside the stage, beyond the stage? Well, that's no concern of mine, because my awareness can roam somewhat within the stage. Okay, fine. But actually, is that right? Can the awareness, does it actually end with stage left, stage right, backstage, front stage? Well, this is the thing to explore. Actually, no, it goes on. It doesn't have the stage in it, but the space of awareness goes on to the sides, to left, to right. It actually also goes on up above, and it goes on down below. And the space of awareness also goes on, it extends behind the stage. I mean, beyond the back wall, beyond backstage, beyond backstage, outside the theater. Awareness actually goes on there. Not only that, if we're in the auditorium looking at the stage, the whole space of the auditorium is available to awareness. And then even behind the back wall of the auditorium, space goes on. So we can just get a hit, maybe, that this life of mine is a box floating in a huge space of awareness, a boundless space of awareness. Maybe you can just get a hit of that. And that space is lovely. It's infinitely peaceful, and it's infinitely loving, and it's infinitely aware. And maybe you just get a flicker. And that's fine. Maybe you tried another time. Maybe you didn't get anything, but maybe you tried another time, something similar to what I've just been saying, and you get a hit. Oh, whoa. And then you sort of come back. But with practice, you can get more and more hits, and you can become quite sort of fluent at either being contracted, basically, or focused, localized into the foreground, or open to this great background. And you can then, when you're focused on something, you can also have a sense of this great context of what you're focused on. You focusing on something, you can be aware of you and the thing you're focusing on, and there's this great background context, in which it's all being somehow held and kind of permitted and allowed to arise. It's beautiful. And that is some kind of taste of, well, of awakening. If awakening is a boundless awareness, then that is a little taste of it. Now, so, okay. So sort of, okay, so now why would we, instead of that, go for something like Mu? I mean, I'm not saying you should, by the way. I'm just saying, what could I sort of, why might I want to? Henry, you've been doing move practice and this koan thing for decades. Why? Why don't you just, you know, why don't you just do this less strange, perhaps less strange practice, non-dual awareness approach? And there's a few reasons that I might offer, and you could see whether these resonate for you. The first is actually is simply in the power of the experience. I'm going to read something to you now. Soko Morinaga. We had a lovely taste of him. Was it? I'm trying to remember what I think I read from his lovely book. I know I did, but what did I read? I read something, didn't I? The first day of this retreat. Did I? I thought I did, but I'm afraid I've completely forgotten what it was. Soko Morinaga. Well, in case I didn't, Soko Morinaga is a 20th century master. Oh yes, I read the thing about the corpse money. That's right, the having money to dispose of your corpse being given to a monk. It actually wasn't pocket money, as he'd hoped. It was money for the disposal of his corpse. Anyway, Morinaga enters a training monastery after his initial preliminary kind of training with his first master. And in the course of that, he's given Mu. And he has a brutal time. I mean, he's sitting often through the night and then during the day on sessions, on retreats, with nothing but Mu, desperately trying to sort of get somewhere. I'm gonna read you a little excerpt from his work with Mu. Let me relate something very idiotic that occurred on begging rounds one day during the period when, asleep or awake, my koan, Mu, was never out of my head. And my only thought was, I want enlightenment. I want enlightenment. Unaware of what was ahead of me or behind me, I banged into something. I had run right into a cow's behind. At just the instant that I realized I had hit the cow's rump, aside from mighty astonishment, the first thing that crossed my mind was, oh, this is enlightenment. The most stubborn of spectators is always right within oneself, always assessing and judging one's own condition. Even when one has reached the extreme of utter exhaustion, the guardian that discriminates and cannot forget this thing called self gets busy whispering all sorts of petty information. In my own case, governed by the tiny knowledge and experience that I had accumulated, the guardian voice would whisper this most unwarranted warning. If you go on like this, you might die. You'd better stop here. Doing Zazen, and still more Zazen, I chalked up nothing but distress and fatigue. Both my head and my body began to lose their normal functioning. The thought that I would surely meet my death if I continued in this vein arose many times to interrupt my practice. But to give the conclusion before the explanation, I can tell you that matters most definitely did not take the turn that I feared. The extremes of fatigue and anguish did not give way to death, but evolved, quite contrary to expectations, into a curve that led right back to where I had started out. One night, I sat in the middle of the night, a lump of fatigue sitting on a zazen cushion. Both body and consciousness were in a haze, and I could not have roused the desire for awakening if I had wanted to, when suddenly the fog cleared and a world of lucidity opened itself. Clearly seeing, clearly hearing, it was yet a world in which there was no me. I cannot fully explain that time. To venture an explanation would be to err somewhere. The one thing I am sure of is that in this instant, the functioning of the heart with which I was born came into play in its purest form. I could not keep still in my uncontainable joy. Without waiting for the morning wake-up bell, I made an unprecedented call on the Roshi and received permission to leave the temple for about 2 hours to deliver the news of my experience to my old master. It didn't take me an hour to walk through the black darkness to his temple. When I arrived, the old Roshi was still in bed. I crawled right up to his pillow and said very simply, "I finally saw." Roshi sprang from his bed, examined me for a time, as if with a glare, and said, "It's from now on, from now on. Sit strongly." This is all he said to me. From then on, for the next 16 years, until my 40th year and Roshi's death at age 87, whether in the monastery or back in the temple, I continued koan practice. No, really, I must say that I continue still. It is not just a matter of the sayings of old masters, but the living koan of human life that continues without limit. So you can sense, can't you, what a big thing it is in a life. This potential of koan, sitting with a koan, it's not little glimpses. They come, they're good, we want them. It's not do a weekend retreat and maybe you'll get a hit. It's a very big turning point that is proffered. And, you know, our great method, our great doorway is Mu. The koan Mu. I mean, basically, perhaps we could say Mu is a key to a door. Mu gives us a key to a door to a great well-being, an infinite well-being, not just of self, but of all. And the door, yeah, I mean, in a sense, it's not a door. In a sense, it's not closed. In a sense, it's open all the time. But there's something about the method of focusing intently on this one little thing that seems to build up, generate a power in our awakening that makes it really sort of potentially able to sort of shake us to our core, rock us right down through multiple layers of conditioning. Because although the chimera, as I was saying, the mirage, may be on the surface, the conditioning, perhaps that goes deep. Excuse me. So yeah, feel free to adjust. I just want to say a couple more things before we end. Get comfortable if you're not. Yeah, a point about different styles, I guess, of approaches to practice. I mean, actually, Morinaga went through sort of classic old style Zen. Let me read you another little bit. It's called The Meaning of Courage. When a monk aspires to enter a training monastery, they take off their wicker hat and place it out of the way in a corner, climb up the steps, and announce themselves. In a large Zen temple, there's a small step that gives way to a wide stretch of the vast corridor beyond. Although there may be dozens of monks in training within the heart of the temple, not a sound is heard in the tomb like stillness. Kneeling on that small step, the monk calls out in a long, loud voice, "I beg your favor," in a form established many long years past. The aspirant monk feels his own voice sucked up into the depths of the monastery. Presently, an answer rises from the distance. Who is it? An older monk appears wearing a cotton robe and looking very experienced. Where have you come from? He demands. The young novice places his hands politely before him on the step, along with the papers he's brought with him. Included in the papers are a record of his personal history, a formal letter requesting entry into the monastery, and a statement in which he pledges to sacrifice his life for practice. With great formality, the newcomer states his name and where he's from, and the priest under whom he apprenticed. The applicant is bid to wait as the temple monk disappears. Returning after some time, the monk categorically does not say, "You're most welcome here, please step inside." Instead, without fail, he conveys the verdict that the newcomer's request is refused. In my own case, while my present weight is 150 pounds, back then I weighed less than 90 pounds and appeared to be nothing but skin and bones when I first begged entrance. I was turned down with this excuse: "Your health appears to be extremely delicate. You wouldn't be able to keep up with the intense training here. Please try at another training hall." Um, and anyway, Morinaga doesn't give up and is eventually let in. And it's not very nice. Even when he is let in, he gets abused and, and actually physically hurt. And it's very difficult. And you might, I mean, of course, we don't do that. I mean, I think obviously we don't do that nasty stuff, abusive stuff. And it would only be in the context of a culture that was very, very collectivist and less individualist, that you could probably bear that kind of training in a positive. It could be a positive thing. And I think probably there have been errors actually in Western Zen over the decades where people try to emulate, understandably, try to emulate what had been done in Japan, thinking it would work here in this very individualist culture where there's a lot of where self-love is in short supply, and where it's all the more important because we are taught to feel so individual. if you see what I mean. If you feel individual and you don't have self-love, it's not a great recipe for well-being. And then if you pile abuse on that just when you're trying to sort out your spiritual life and grow in the most marvelous ways possible, that's not very healthy either. And but here's the thing. I mean, this is what I'm really trying to get to. That one approach in our spiritual life is sort of nurturing, to be kind, to receive kindness, and to give ourselves kindness, and to, of course, give others kindness. That's obviously essential. That's really where we want to be developing as much as possible, of course. But in the matter of sort of spiritual training, of the development of a human, um, that side is essential. But there is actually also a place for a firmer hand, for a kind of discipline and self-discipline that asks us to step up. And probably this Mu practice, I mean, it's not very forgiving in one sense, in that, you're not given a lot of hand holding. There's only so much you can be given. The rest is sort of down to us to just doggedly sit with Mu, no matter how unrewarding it may be for stretches of time. You see what I mean? And there's practice that is much more immediately rewarding. And the two that I was just outlining are probably on that side. You're more likely to get you know identifiable sort of benefits more quickly, I would say. I mean, for sure with mindfulness, possibly with non-dual awareness practices. But Mu is a little bit kind of forbidding. It's just this, well, how am I going to find this ultimate liberation just with this little meaningless syllable? It's a very reasonable question. But actually, given the context of Mu practice, it we can actually, but we don't know how close we are to it. We might get little encouraging shifts and tastes and glimpses. That's great. We might, and we might not, and it might just be the next breath that we'll have a moment like Morinaga, when we didn't realize how close we were, and all of a sudden we're seeing and hearing just as before, but it's a world without me. The samadhi of Mu has just extracted us, me. It's just done it. And maybe there's something in the fact that it is kind of austere. It is a bit stark. It may not be very inviting. It may not be apparently warm and cozy, but it may not be a bad thing that it isn't. There's the kind of training that calls something forth from us. And this less handheld way of training, I mean, on these Zoom retreats, I'm doing way more hand-holding and guiding and meditation, way more than would probably normally happen in any Zendo. I don't mind at all. I'm happy to do it. I think it's well, some of you may You just turn your volume down if you don't want to hear it, I assume. But I think it's on the whole a helpful thing. But in other styles of meditation, you're constantly being guided. The Zen style, even on these retreats, you're going to have long stretches when it's you and your breath, your hearing, your seeing, your body sensing, and your mu, and the wall maybe. It's down to you. How are you going to grow into peace with basically no external help? You may get a lot of help outside of it, but now you're sitting. You find your way to be at peace. And the contention would be, if you find it for yourself, granted with a little bit of help from the elements of this tradition, but still you've got to sort of use them in a sense. You've got to do the work of a certain kind of growth, a certain kind of, I was going to say evolution, but that sounds too grand. Just a certain kind of shift. And if you really do it yourself, isn't it somehow stronger? Isn't it more real? Isn't it something in your own soul that's coming forward? Therefore, more valuable. Right. Okay. In praise of Mu, there's that. Lastly, it's possible also to have, if we're in a koan training beyond Mu, we're going to get to realize awakening is not only of one kind. It's a risk in any spiritual tradition that it gets a bit fixated on one major discovery, and perhaps can get a bit dogmatic about it. I would contend that koan training, it may in places get dogmatic, unfortunately, but it knows, the masters in the koans are aware that awakening has more than one face. Non-dual awareness is one awakening, only one. There are others. It's a most amazing thing. There's awakening with no space whatsoever. There's awakening with utter solidity. One lump is what this universe is. You can awaken to that. You can vividly experience that yourself. That's different from non-dual awareness. There's awakening that isn't something you discover or see or experience at all. Non-experience. Utter negation. We heard about that. The letter A, that, scripture, nothing but the letter A. Non. You can go through that. Non. You can't report from it, but you go through it and you know you've been through it. And thereafter, you're at home in the world, alive for the first time. So these are some of the treasures of the koan way. Okay, let's see. Oh boy. Okay, so it's time to time to wrap up. I hope that you've been. I haven't been looking. I've got this card over the screen, so I can't see. But I very much hope you've adjusted and been comfortable. Yeah. Okay. So we're still in it. It's the last day, meaning it's not over. So keep sitting with Mu. If you're doing Mu, do it. If you're not doing Mu, fine, do your own thing, whatever your practice may be. Or if you want to pick up Mu these last hours, pick it up. Exhale Mu. This whole Zoom will be sort of a gently humming with Mu. Okay. So many, many thanks. I think, Christian, we probably need a little bit of a break after this. Whatever to call this. So please, let's have, I would think at least 7 minutes or something. I'll leave it to you, Christian, to say what you think is right, but maybe enough time to sort of, replenish, adjust fluid levels, etc., and stretch the legs. Okay, thank you very much.